Bonjour, Paris. Right now, 6,000 people are flying from across the globe to Paris to gather about 10 minutes from here. I'm going to tell you why and how your Android skills can make a difference for the millions of people around the globe touched by two amazing entities. It's a real honor to be here at Droidcon Paris, delivering the keynote today. Thank you for getting up early and joining after that awesome party last night. Today I'm going to share a couple of my passions and invite you to create new experiences for users at the nexus of two exciting entities. My name is Mark Scheel. I'm here from Denver, Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains of the United States of America. I run the Google Developer Group in Denver and work on an app changing the face of healthcare that has been downloaded more than 7 million times. Today I will tell you about two amazing companies. They started small, grew big, and along the way impacted me personally. They are Airbnb and Android. And their potential together can offer opportunity to everyone in this room. I'll share how they got started, how they have grown, and how I think you can take advantage of their synergy to create impactful experiences for very large user bases. How you can excite and delight people around the world with 5 specific examples. Each of you here at Droidcon France has a special talent, a deep knowledge of Android that can be leveraged to continue this story. Your understanding of the fragment lifecycle, material design, and an opinion on whether or not enums matter is like a superpower that can be used to delight and thrill millions upon millions of users around the world. And superheroes bring me to a theme of this talk. In comic book terminology, an origin story is an account or backstory revealing how a character or team gained their superpowers and or the circumstances under which they became superheroes or supervillains. I love a good origin story. It can be entertaining and so revealing. In America, we have a common phrase. Do you know where I am coming from? 7 simple words, but they say so much. When one has empathy, they not only know where the speaker is coming from, they too have experienced a similar situation and can relate on a personal level. In other words, they are picking up what the speaker is putting down. They are on the same page. We're all familiar with some origin stories. Most of you in this room will probably recognize these 2 popular examples. How was it that Luke Skywalker was able to make the impossible shot and down the impenetrable Death Star that destroyed Alderaan? Well, in his own words, he, quote, used to bullseye womp rats in my T-16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters. This backstory of Luke's time on Tatooine helps an audience achieve a better understanding of who he is, where he came from, and what he is capable of. Then there is Jean Valjean, the protagonist of French author Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. His 19 years after prison, both hiding from and embracing his past, are colored by seminal moments from his origin story. How he tried to survive an economic depression by stealing a loaf of bread and enduring a long and difficult prison sentence because of that decision under the scrutiny of the prison inspector, Javert. After serving time, Jean is paroled out of prison. He steals again, but through the kindness of a stranger is saved from more time behind bars. This kindness from a stranger is so unexpected and revelatory that the event becomes transformational for Jean Valjean. Prisoner 24601 becomes repentant, a kind and honorable member of society who spends the rest of his life giving back to those who are less fortunate. His amazing story, since told on stage and film, would not have been what it is without that formational origin story. But today I'm not here to focus on awkward teenagers from Tatooine, a planet with 2 suns in a Star Wars universe, or even period fictional characters from the French Revolution who fight on the right side of morality and human values, even if they sometimes fight on the wrong side of the law. I'm here to focus on today's protagonists, Airbnb and Android, and how together they have opportunity for each of you. The sharing economy. One of the biggest trends in tech business in recent years. As we can see here, alongside iTriage, where I work, the focus of several of the hottest mobile experiences in the world. Airbnb is a model example, a business built on the idea of sharing a living space with strangers. A business that has grown so large that later this week here in Paris at Parc de la Villette, some 6,000 Airbnb hosts from at least 40 countries will attend a conference called the Airbnb Open. That is 4 times as many as gathered at the inaugural Airbnb Open last year in America. Airbnb today is an enormous brand connecting world travelers with unique places to stay. Perhaps some folks in this room have used the service as a guest or as a host. Maybe you've partied in Paris, dined in Denali, or taken a hike in Hungary. To give you a sense of the scale of Airbnb, a business that started with a single rental in 2007, 8 years ago, let's review some numbers. In the summer of 2010, some 47,000 guests used Airbnb for an overnight stay. Think for a moment. How many do you think stayed this summer, 5 years later? Do you have your guess? In the summer of 2015, Airbnb had 17 million guest visits. That is more people than live in Greece, Sweden, or Switzerland. Just this summer. 17 million is a big number. In fact, on August 8th of this year, the busiest known night in Airbnb history, over 1 million guests spent the night with Airbnb. 1 million guests in a single night. Amazing. Just think if you were to write Android software in this business space. In a single night, you might reach 1 million users. 1 million guests is a big change from some humble beginnings. In fact, it all began with one small apartment in San Francisco and some serious hustle to raise seed funding for an idea. Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia were roommates in 2007, struggling to pay rent on their San Francisco loft. They had an idea when they heard how hard it was for people coming into town to find hotel rooms during conferences. They inflated some air mattresses that they placed in their modest kitchen, made personalized breakfast, and charged a nominal fee. The guests were thrilled, and an idea was born. The next year, a former roommate named Nate joined the team, and they started airbedandbreakfast.com. They bootstrapped this business with money they made, and I'm not making this up, selling customized cereal boxes during American political convention parties in 2008. They raised $30,000 selling boxes of cereal at $40 a piece. That gave them the initial seed money they needed to launch their business. There were subsequent lows, sometimes referred to by entrepreneurs as the trough of sorrow. They ate unsold cereal to save on money. They were rejected by 8 well-known venture capitalists while trying to raise money. Venture capitalists who were wrong about the potential of Joe, Brian, and Nate, and deeply regret that mistake today. Things started to look up when they got into the winter 2009 class at Y Combinator, an accelerator program in California where Dropbox and other technology giants have spent time. They changed their name to Airbnb and made other important changes. They visited listings in New York City to understand why they weren't getting great traction. They determined, consistent with their roots from the Rhode Island School of Design, where both Joe and Brian graduated from, that the listing photos were not good enough. Users were using camera phones and taking Craigslist quality pictures, and guests were not impressed. Airbnb embarked on an expensive but ultimately important professional photography program that allowed their hosts to have free, beautiful photos. They eventually received investment from celebrity investor Ashton Kutcher, and the enormous growth I referenced earlier started to take shape. What is my personal connection to Airbnb? 3 years ago, in 2012, I brought my parents and sister to an American football game in London. Traveling overseas can be stressful. I found us a flat on Airbnb. It was my first time ever using the service. It was incredible. I recently read a piece on Medium by Dan Pupius, who discussed traits of great software engineers. It struck me that the reason I was so impressed with my host in London was similar to the traits that Dan described in his article. Dan's care model is curiosity, awareness, resoluteness, and empathy. These were all traits that I saw in my host and made our visit special. Since that first trip, I've used Airbnb as a guest in Spain, Canada, Hong Kong, California, Colorado, and elsewhere. Every place I've visited, I felt warmly welcomed, and I've had unique and memorable experiences. I've been in and out of ski towns most of my adult life. I love to snowboard. I love to get up before the sun rises and skin to the top of a peak with a split board and ride down before most folks even wake up. I've lived in Breckenridge, Aspen, and Vail, 3 incredible ski towns in Colorado, which starts to explain how I became a ski town Airbnb host. Now, when I was a little kid, my life goal was to someday own a pinball machine. It's all I wanted in life. And today, I have a pinball machine in my kitchen, the same game that my sister and I used to play when we went on vacation. When I bought that pinball machine some 10 years ago, I had met all my life goals. What was I going to do after that? Owning a property in a ski town became my next aspirational goal. And I'm very lucky today to own a small property in one of the most beautiful places on earth, Vail, Colorado, and to have Airbnb helping to make it possible and giving me interactions that I cherish. Since I started hosting several years ago, more than 100 families, solo travelers, and groups of friends have stayed at my Vail spot. It is a real privilege to share one of my favorite places on earth, especially with travelers that share my passion for the outdoors, a nice meal cooked on the grill by Gore Creek, or the epic ski turns nearby. When I started, I was the only property listed in Vail, Colorado. Today, there are hundreds of listings within just a couple miles of me. Yet I still show up on the first page of most searches for Vail, Colorado. This is in part because I work so hard to give each guest the same incredible experience I once received. That and some technology enhancements that help differentiate my property have led me to be a 5-star rated, Airbnb designated superhost. Let's take a little break and watch a short video why some other folks love Airbnb hosting too.
People all over the world are renting their space on Airbnb. We asked some of them to share their reasons for hosting in their own words.
The extra income allows us to follow careers that we're more passionate about.
We're saving up money for our wedding.
The money I earn with Airbnb allows me to spend more time with him.
We are saving for a bigger house, and our Airbnb money is going to the deposit.
After the kids left home, I had all this extra space, and Airbnb helped me fill it.
Gracias a Airbnb, tendré una mejor jubilación y en 6 meses.
There's so many people in the world that want to travel, and there's so many people with spare rooms.
This year, we have helped over 400 people.
And we already had over 75 guests.
Airbnb is like the magic link that just brings the two together.
I soldi che guadagniamo su Airbnb li usiamo per viaggiare.
And within a week, I had my first reservation.
Me gusta hospedar porque así practico mi inglés. Hello, how are you?
It is an amazing house, and the view is second to none.
I enjoy seeing people's faces when they arrive and saw the view for the first time.
One amazing thing is that I get to help people live their dreams. And that is why I host.
Welcome to Airbnb.
Benvenuti su Airbnb.
Benvindo a Airbnb.
Welcome to Airbnb.
Awesome. If I wanted to right now, I could pull out my Android device and control my property, despite the fact that it's 5,000 miles or 8,000 kilometers away. I can change the heat, I can see a guest at the front door and let them inside by controlling the lock. A guest on site can play music by Bluetooth, Chromecast to the flat screen TV, and book a dinner reservation or check a snow report, all using Android. Which brings us to our next business origin story. The origin story for Android follows a similar arc to Airbnb. There's a trough of sorrow before a transformational moment, and then the enormous growth you are familiar with. You're surely aware at how popular Android is, by some measurements powering 85% of all smartphones. But there were times when it looked like Android would not happen at all. Founded by Andy Rubin, an engineer with a robotics background, the original Android team had earlier worked on a niche phone called the Danger Sidekick. It was very well received by people who had it, but most thought it was made by T-Mobile and not Danger. The small Android company was in stealth mode in Silicon Valley and had their own serial moment. They had not paid rent on their office space and had no money. The landlord was threatening to evict them when Andy phoned a friend for help. There was no time right then for a wire of money. The friend brought him an envelope of 10,000 American dollars in cash that same day. That crisis averted, they continued work on their mobile operating system. Eventually, they had some meetings with Google leadership, but the purpose of the meetings was unclear. Google was flush with cash and making lots of acquisitions, and soon they offered to take on Android. The Android team moved into Building 44 on Google's campus and stayed somewhat isolated from Google overall. If you have visited Google's headquarters in Mountain View, when the Jelly Bean or Kit Kat statue was the freshest treat on a sculpture lawn, you were at Building 44. Despite the acquisition, though, few thought that Android could really succeed. Mobile carriers held a death grip on devices, and none of them wanted to cede control. In 2008, the same year Joe, Brian, and Nate were selling cereal boxes, an executive on the Android team with ties to T-Mobile brokered the release of the G1, or HTC Dream. Maybe some of you folks in this room once had that device. Even more of you might have the G2, known as the HTC Magic, in a drawer somewhere. It was given away at Google I/O in 2009. The software interface on these early devices would be unrecognizable to today's users. But it was finally out of stealth mode, a Linux-based, mostly open source mobile operating system that was ready to eat the world. And eat the world it has. My personal involvement began with Android in 2009 at an event in San Diego, California. It was where I got my first ever Android device running the new Cupcake operating system, the Motorola Click. I loved that phone. At the event, I met another new Android developer, Mike Wolfson, who is now a friend, a Google developer expert, and has spoken here at Droidcon Paris. Android marched on. After Cupcake, there were more tasty treats, from donut to marshmallow. Since the 2008 launch of Android API Level 1, the feature growth in Android has been staggering. I remember when the HTC Evo was the first 4G device and the first Android device with turn-by-turn directions. Now we expect that on all devices, even those we wear on our wrists. Over the years, performance enhancements, rich notifications, DOS, and more have helped Android reach billions of users. Android may have struggled early on, but its growth has been astronomical since. In 2013, the last time I could find daily activation statistics, more than 1.5 million devices were being activated every single day. And today there are well over 1 billion Android users out there. Now let's watch a short video about Android that will remind you how great it is to be part of the Android world.
Remember back in school, when you either invited the new kid over to your table, or you didn't? If you did, that was a cool move. That was an and move. And moves take guts, but they can mean everything. Their and move was to put wings on a bicycle. Now, we fly. When enough people have an and view, the world changes. Forever. If you think about it, you're only here because of an and moment. Opening yourself up isn't easy, but when you do, it's hard to forget, because it leads to something new, something better. That's why we need this, and them, and you. Yeah, you, watching this right now. Because everyone doing the same thing won't move us forward, but everyone doing their own thing, together, can.
Airbnb and Android have delighted users in every corner of the globe. Together they hold enormous potential for making life even better for guests and hosts. This was underscored for me at a hackathon recently. A rotating group of friends of mine compete in a national hackathon every January. 2 years ago, we won $10,000 with an Internet of Things Google Glass robotic camera mashup. This year, we made the final stage and presented in front of 2,000 people before winning $15,000 with Host Magic, a hackathon project that brought Android and Airbnb together to provide guests with rich in-home experiences through permission-granted home automation control. There were hundreds of teams competing at this event, and this validation from the judges, executives, and venture capitalists convinced me thoroughly that Android and Airbnb belong together. So you in this room, ready for your next $1 million idea, or an idea to create 1 million smiles? Here come 5 of them that pair an Android and an Airbnb feature that will make for happier guests, which drive better reviews, which drive more income for hosts and happier hosts. Number 1, Photosphere and Airbnb photography. Photosphere is a feature available in most pockets in this room. Comes with a stock Android camera. Photosphere allows the photographer to take immersive 360-degree street view style photo experiences. Airbnb has long valued amazing photography that gives guests a better feel for the property they are reviewing. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, what is a photosphere worth? A lot more. One of the challenges of creating a good photosphere is that over the course of approximately 50 individual photos that will be stitched together by software, the camera lens needs to be in exactly the same position. This is very difficult by hand. If it moves by as much as an inch, you get parallax problems. You may have once taken a photosphere and noticed somebody's head was missing. That's the parallax problem. Because of the straight lines in many rooms, it turns out that good indoor photospheres are some of the hardest to take. How can we reduce the photosphere parallax problem? With inexpensive hardware solutions. You can find methods online that involve cutting up a tennis ball and using string, which I've tried with medium success. Or you can combine a tripod with a home-built rig that puts the camera lens at the center of the pivot axis. I've done this with incredible success. A professional photographer can get $100 for shooting a property with traditional photographs. What could you get for shooting photospheres with your own custom-built hardware? Number 2, I'm thrilled to see Tony Fadell at the helm of Nest and as a part of Google. Even more excited to see what he will do with Google Glass. I have a 3rd-generation Nest in my home and have played around with the Works with Nest program and Cloud API. So have 10,000 other developers. Nest Weave provides the most comprehensive program for connected home products. And despite what the Twitter account @InternetOfShit has to hysterically say, the IoT revolution is here to stay. I personally enjoy a smart thermostat, smart door lock, smart garage door, even smart meat thermometers for perfect stress-free grilling. By proxy, my guests also leverage benefit from these tools. Nest has proprietary algorithms that can tell if you are home or away, and this status is available through their API. So my first idea around Nest is to write a tool that can take custom actions based on whether or not somebody is home or away. It provides great security benefit and can provide customized experiences to your guests. Another Nest idea comes from years of experiences with guests at my property. Everybody is different. Some people like to sleep in the cold, some people like to sleep in the hot, and it varies by season. So I challenge somebody in this audience to be the first person to set up roaming environment profiles so that when I go stay at an Airbnb, I can send that profile to my host ahead of time and I can maximize my environmental comfort when I'm staying there. What an experience that would be. 3, physical web. I flew into Paris yesterday. It's currently 1 in the morning where I'm from in Colorado. My internal clock is all messed up. So if I wake up in the middle of the night tonight and have a question about the Airbnb I'm staying in this week, my host will probably be unavailable. But with a little planning, smart developers and hosts interested in delighting guests can leverage the physical web with Bluetooth beacons. One of my highest reviewed amenities in Vail is a Keurig coffee maker. I leave free K-cups out and creamer packages in a refrigerator. But I'll be first to admit that the thing is hard to use. To start with, there is no obvious way to turn it on. It was not designed by Tony LaFell. Yes, I have a lengthy condo guide, a PDF that is almost 30 pages long, but frankly, almost nobody reads the manual. But what if a beacon solution showed them a YouTube video while they stood near the coffee maker? This is the promise of Eddystone, Google's Oakman beacon format that is compatible with Android and iOS. Using Bluetooth Low Energy, this tech can give users what they want, where they want it, with location context-aware solutions. Helping Airbnb guests with property amenities using proximity smart communications will improve experiences. Guests will leave better reviews, and everyone wins. Want to scale this idea more quickly? Bypass the physical beacons and use NFC tags or QR codes as a cheaper proximity solution substitute. 4. One of the interesting developments in Airbnb's history was the rollout of wish lists. It turned an operational tool for procuring lodging into an aspirational one and added a clever social angle as well. I hope you all have had a chance to experience Google Cardboard. It's incredible. I've used Oculus Rift and Vive. 2016 is going to be a big year for virtual reality. But Cardboard is surprisingly good at a fraction of the cost and headache. You don't need a physical computer. You don't need to set up lasers in the corner of your room. It just works by popping a phone out of your pocket into the device. And this brings me back to the aspirational side of Airbnb. How amazing would it be if you could have virtual reality walkthroughs of properties you aspire to visit? Please note that Google developer expert Etienne Caron is giving a Cardboard session later today that I encourage you to check out. And 5, before I wrap up. I hope all of you have a Google Chromecast. When the latest version was announced, I pre-ordered one along with my Nexus 5X. I love it so much that I brought it with me to France, and I have it set up at my Airbnb. So pro tip for Airbnb travelers, ask your host if they have an HDMI port and bring your entertainment with you. I love to travel because of adventure, from kayaking in a volcano lake in Guatemala, to snowboarding with an avalanche beacon, to shark cage diving in South Africa. For me, the destination, the Airbnb property, is really just a launching pad for adventure. Luckily for me, many of the guests that have visited in Vail feel the same way. They've given me tips about where to hike, bike, and ski, which is awesome. So how can we use Chromecast in an Airbnb property? Someone in this room could write a custom app to act as a TV concierge for your guests and show context-aware information on the largest screen in the property. I'm imagining something like Tony Stark's heads-up display, but tuned for local adventure right now. In Vail, you might have weather information, seasonal photos, snow reports, restaurant availability, movie times, and more. Those are just 5 ideas. I have notebooks full of others. Android has evolved to the point where there are so many amazing features and related technologies that it's almost overwhelming, but I absolutely love it. Put Android and Airbnb together, and you can truly deliver magic. I have other ideas collecting dust and notebooks, from machine learning guest query response auto-generators to a glass-at-work home cleaning software solution. And then there's the one that I'm launching this week. It's a little more old school. ThePlaidBook.com builds beautiful hand-curated review books for Airbnb hosts who are proud of their hard-earned online reputation. I hope you'll see one on a coffee table in Airbnb property sometime soon. Either way, working on the project has brought me many smiles. And speaking of me, let me spin one last origin story. This has been my first ever keynote, and my first ever talk in Europe. Where it will take me, I don't know, but I invite each of you to connect with me online at 5280 mark and talk to me in person during today's event. So now I challenge you, the amazing, smart Android developers in this room, who are attending sessions today to become even stronger Android talents. Today I've shared the story of Airbnb and Android. There are billions of users out there ready to be delighted, ready to be thrilled. Combine these two together in your next project and get ready for the smiles. Merci Paris, je t'aime.